Albert Einstein's political journey, from liberalism to global advocacy. Albert Einstein, widely recognized for his groundbreaking contributions to physics, was also an outspoken public intellectual, deeply engaged in the political and social issues of his time. His political journey was complex, evolving through various stages, reflecting his growing concern for human rights, social justice, and global governance. More than just a physicist, Einstein's voice resonated across the political landscape, making him a champion of progressive ideals and humanitarian causes. Early political involvement: the German Democratic Party. In 1918, Einstein took his first steps into the political sphere by becoming a signatory of the founding proclamation of the German Democratic Party, DDP. This liberal party emerged in the aftermath of World War I, during the formation of the Weimar Republic. The DDP promoted democracy, civil liberties, and progressive reforms in a time of political turbulence. Einstein's support for the DDP reflected his early commitment to liberal democratic values, as he saw democracy as a safeguard against the chaos and violence that had torn Europe apart during the war. The Weimar Republic was fragile, constantly threatened by both the far right and far left. Einstein, along with other intellectuals, hoped that the DDP's progressive agenda could help stabilize the republic and pave the way for a more equitable society. However, Germany's political instability would soon challenge Einstein's liberal ideals, pushing him toward more radical thoughts on how society should be structured. From liberalism to socialism: Einstein's critique of capitalism. As the political environment around him grew increasingly dire, particularly with the rise of fascism in Europe, Einstein began to critique not just political systems, but economic ones as well. By the 1930s, he had grown increasingly critical of capitalism, which he saw as inherently exploitative and unjust. His famous essay, Why Socialism?, published in 1949, outlined his thoughts on the matter. In it, Einstein lamented the social inequality that capitalism produced, arguing that it led to a society where the pursuit of wealth became an end in itself, overshadowing human needs and moral considerations. In this essay, Einstein described capitalism as a source of widespread suffering and inequality, claiming that it fostered greed, competition, and power imbalances that kept the majority of people in a state of perpetual insecurity. He argued that socialism, in contrast, could align economic and political systems with human welfare, reducing inequality and creating a system where resources were shared more equitably. Einstein's support for socialism wasn't born from dogmatic ideology, but from his deep concern for humanity's well-being. He envisioned a world where technological and industrial advances would serve everyone, not just a privileged few. However, his endorsement of socialism was not without caveats. He remained wary of authoritarianism, a concern that shaped his views on Bolshevism. Criticism and evolving views on Bolshevism. Einstein's views on Bolshevism, the political ideology behind the Soviet Union's communist regime, were cautious and evolved over time. In 1925, Einstein made a sharp critique of the Bolsheviks, condemning their lack of a well-regulated system of government and calling their rule a regime of terror. For Einstein, the authoritarian nature of Soviet governance and its use of violence to maintain power were incompatible with his belief in democratic governance and individual rights. He saw the Bolshevik system as a tragedy in human history, a deviation from the ideals of social justice he cherished. However, as the years passed, Einstein adopted a more moderated view of Bolshevism, recognizing that, despite its faults, the movement had been born out of a desire for social justice. In a 1929 reflection on Vladimir Lenin, Einstein expressed admiration for Lenin's personal sacrifice and commitment to the cause of equality. In Lenin, Einstein wrote, "I honor a man who in total sacrifice of his own person has committed his entire energy to realizing social justice. I do not find his methods advisable. One thing is certain, however, men like him are the guardians and renewers of mankind's conscience." This statement reflected the complexity of Einstein's political thought. While he could not support the oppressive methods used by Lenin and the Bolsheviks, he saw value in their pursuit of social justice, understanding that revolutionary moments often arise from profound inequalities. In this way, Einstein managed to balance his socialist ideals with his commitment to non-violence and democratic principles. A vision for global governance. Einstein's advocacy for world government. As Einstein's political thinking matured, he became increasingly concerned with the existential dangers facing humanity, particularly after witnessing the horrors of 2 world wars and the rise of nuclear weapons. The idea of nationalism, with its inherent rivalries and potential for conflict, struck him as a major threat to global peace. In response, he began to advocate for a radical solution, the creation of a democratic world government. Einstein's vision for world government was not one of centralized authoritarianism, but of a federation of nations bound by democratic principles. He believed that only a supranational governing body could eliminate the most terrible danger in which man has ever found himself, namely, the threat of global war, especially nuclear war. He wrote passionately about this idea, arguing that individual nation-states could no longer be trusted to act in the collective interest of humanity. His advocacy for world government grew even more pronounced after the development of the atomic bomb, which he had indirectly influenced through his famous letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1939, urging the US to pursue atomic research. The devastating power of nuclear weapons confirmed Einstein's fears about the dangers of unrestrained national power. In his later years, he became one of the most vocal proponents of international cooperation and disarmament, calling for the abolition of nuclear weapons and the establishment of global institutions capable of enforcing peace. A man under watch, Einstein and the FBI. Einstein's outspoken political views and advocacy for socialist and globalist causes made him a target of suspicion, especially in the United States, where he emigrated in 1933, after the rise of Adolf Hitler in Germany. The FBI, under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover, opened a secret dossier on Einstein, which eventually grew to over 1,400 pages. The FBI's concerns about Einstein ranged from his support for civil rights movements to his friendships with socialist figures. Despite this scrutiny, Einstein remained undeterred in his political activism, speaking out on a wide range of issues, from racial segregation in the US to anti-fascist efforts during World War II. His pacifism and commitment to human rights made him a revered figure in many progressive circles, but also a figure of suspicion during the heightened tensions of the Cold War. Admiration for Gandhi, a meeting of minds across continents. One of the most profound influences on Einstein's moral and political thought was Mahatma Gandhi, the Indian leader of the non-violent independence movement against British rule. Einstein was deeply impressed by Gandhi's philosophy of non-violence and his commitment to truth and social justice. The two men corresponded across continents, sharing their thoughts on human rights, peace, and the struggle for justice. Though Einstein and Gandhi never met in person, their connection was established in 1931 through Wilfrid Israel, a mutual friend who brought Gandhi's disciple V.A. Sundaram to meet Einstein at his summer home in Kaputh. During this meeting, Einstein wrote a letter to Gandhi, praising him as a role model for the generations to come. Gandhi responded quickly with a letter of his own, expressing admiration for Einstein's work in science and his commitment to peace. Einstein saw in Gandhi a kindred spirit, someone who, like him, sought to elevate humanity through ethical action and who believed that violence could never be the answer to societal problems. Their correspondence, though brief, highlighted the moral and philosophical dimensions of Einstein's political thought, which were deeply intertwined with his scientific pursuits. A scientist, a humanitarian, and a political thinker, Albert Einstein's political views were as dynamic and impactful as his scientific discoveries. From his early support for the German Democratic Party to his later advocacy for socialism and global government, Einstein consistently sought to align his political beliefs with his deep concern for humanity's future. His critiques of capitalism, his nuanced views on Bolshevism, his admiration for Gandhi, and his call for world governance all reflected a mind deeply committed to the pursuit of justice and peace. Einstein's political legacy, much like his scientific one, continues to inspire. His willingness to speak out on social issues, even when it brought in scrutiny, showed that he was not only a brilliant physicist, but also a passionate humanitarian who believed that the power of ideas, whether scientific or political, could change the world for the better.